Right then. We will go through the presentation now, which is just a few slides, and there will be time for any questions related to the topics at the end of each section. This session is not designed to look at how to complete the application form, but rather to answer any queries you may have. For a step-by-step guide on how to complete your application, please read through our guide for applicants, which can be found on the application resources section of our website, and Olivia will send you a link in the chat box. And you can learn about hints and tips on the application form by listening to our recorded webinars, which are available on our website under the application resources section. Therefore, in this presentation, I will start by giving you a quick introduction to opportunities available under Key Action 1 in the field of adult education. Then I will be looking into the PIC process, what is new in the 2019 call application forms, the activity details section in the applications, and the budget. For organizations active in adult education, they can apply for funding to support any of the following mobility activities within a project. Teaching training assignments, where staff deliver teaching or training in a partner organization abroad. Secondly, structured courses or training events abroad. Staff participate in structured courses or training events to support the professional development of adult education staff. And third, job shadowing, where staff undertake a job shadowing experience in an adult education organization abroad. The duration of the period abroad must be from 2 days to 2 months, excluding travel time, and the days must be consecutive. Staff must be based in the UK and must undertake their mobility in an eligible organization based in another program country. Please note that UK organizations cannot receive staff from other organizations, and the organization sending the participant must apply to the national agency in their own country for funding. So in this case, the UK organization will apply to the UK national agency to send their staff to another program country or countries only. You can find more details about each type of activity in the 2019 Erasmus Plus program guide at page 69. Now let's find out which subjects would you like to discuss. Please choose the topic that you have the most questions about. As we can see, most of you are interested in the application form and what's new, and in the activity details section. So we will be discussing this after the PIC process, and I will also like to say that a lot of information about the application form and the activity details section can also be found in the recorded webinars on our website. I will now continue on with the presentation. Organizations which have participated in Erasmus Plus or other EU-funded programs previously will already have a participant identification code, a PIC number. But I've included a few slides showing frequently asked questions about the PIC process for those of you who are new. So in order to apply for Erasmus Plus funding, the applicant organization must have a participant identification code, a PIC number, and must also ensure that its UK partner organizations have a PIC as well. The PIC is a 9-digit participant identification code which is unique to your organizations and will help you complete the application form. If you haven't got a PIC, you need to complete 2 registration steps, but please double check that your organization definitely does not have a PIC. We recommend you ask colleagues at your organization in case someone else has already created a PIC. Because if your organization already has a PIC and you create a new one, you should use the one and not create a new one, as having 2 or more PICs for the same organization will create problems. If you do need to create a PIC, first you will need to create an account on EU login. This platform of the European Commission was formerly known as ECAS, and it changed name a couple of months ago, but its function is essentially the same. EU login is a point for user authentication to a wide range of Commission tools. The registration process is really simple, and you can download a guide on our website which will talk you through how to do this. You will then need to obtain a PIC through the participant portal, and again, the link to the portal is on our website. After starting the registration process, you will be prompted to provide information about your organization, as well as upload documents related to your organization. These documents are needed to prove the legal status and financial capacity of your organization, and it is essential that the information on these documents matches the information you have input on the portal. So if you already have a PIC, can you just forget about this whole process? Not really. You need to log into the portal and check that the details you have input are up to date and that they match exactly the details in the supporting documents that I will mention in a minute. In particular, you should ensure that the organization address is the registered address and is accurate, because the NA will conduct all checks against this address. The email address should be accurate, and the contact telephone numbers for the applicant, and if applicable, the national consortium members, should be a UK contact number. Also, please be aware that all of your UK partners will also need to have obtained a PIC and have uploaded all of the necessary supporting documents on the participant portal before you can submit your application. So now on, these are the common questions we receive about the PIC process. First question is, how can I check my institution's PIC? If you aren't sure if your institution's PIC, you can actually search it via the participant portal, following the hyperlink on our website and selecting Search from the Organizations tab. We are also frequently asked about what documents are needed to be uploaded. So, as applicant, you need to upload a completed legal entity form and also a financial identification form. And both will have to be accompanied by supporting documents. The legal entity form needs to have supporting document, any document of incorporation or registration which prove the legal status of the organization. And the financial identification form needs to have a supporting document, a recent bank statement. Your UK partners also have to have completed the legal entity form and uploaded it to the portal. There are links to where you can find these forms in the handout. If you have a VAT number, this should be on the PIC for your organization and your VAT certificate uploaded onto the portal as well. Now we will take a few minutes to take any specific queries you may have about the PIC process. As we don't see any questions so far, we will continue on. First, we have a short second poll. Basically, if your organization does have a PIC, please answer the poll and then we'll continue on to another topic.
Thank you everyone for answering the question. So now I'd like to cover what's new in the applications to be submitted in the 2019 call. The biggest change for this year is that the European Commission have released a completely new web form. Unlike previous years, this application form is online and is accessed within your web browser instead of the previous PDF application e-form. Before you can access the site, you need an EU login that you should already have from obtaining your PIC. Once you have access the website, the interface will allow you to search opportunities, for example, different key action to apply for, to find your draft applications, an application you have submitted, and of course, fill out an application. It is important with this new application form that you are connected to the internet when completing it, since it automatically saves every 2 seconds. When a section is complete, it is marked with a green tick, and when a section is missing information, the section is marked with a red exclamation mark. With this being a new application form, there are many differences, both small and significant. We will go through some of the most important in today's webinar, which include the differences with activities and budget and changes affecting how the hosting partners are included in the application. Quickly before we move on, for further information on the web form and how to complete it, please read our guide for applicants and watch our pre-recorded webinar where we take you through the form step by step. The links to our website where you can find these resources can be found in the handout to this webinar. As the form is new, we strongly recommend that you complete and submit it in some days in advance of the 5th February deadline in case you experience any technical difficulties. Before we move on to the other changes, I want to point out that if you submitted a successful application last year, you are not guaranteed to be successful in 2019, and you should not complete the 2019 application with the exact same information as last year. You should review and update your application to take into account any feedback provided from your last application, information about new procedures in place to manage your project, and any new information on the need for the project with updated qualitative data where applicable. The application process is very competitive and the quality of applications rises each year. So just because your application was successful last year does not mean it will be successful again in 2019. This is even more important given the updates that I'm about to talk you through with you now. So to begin with, there are some more general differences that applicant organizations should be aware of before submitting an application. Under relevance of the project, there is one additional assessment award criteria as follows. The extent to which the proposal is reaching out to target groups with fewer opportunities, involving organizations who are newcomers to the action. All assessment criteria can be found on page 54 and 55 in the 2019 program guide. There is no longer a section that allows you to expand on the profile and background of the hosting organization. This information should still be communicated within the narrative of your application to strengthen your application form. An application need only be submitted with one hosting organization, with other organizations being able to be added to the project at a later stage. If organizations do not identify all hosting organizations at their application form, they are asked to provide the methods in which they aim to identify these during the project lifecycle. For the 2019 call, it is no longer necessary for receiving organizations and hosting organization to have a PIC to apply. Although it is still recommended that they obtain a PIC, if you decide to not enter a PIC, the necessary information should be completed manually on the e-form. Applicant organizations do have to have a PIC in order to apply, as well as members of the National Mobility Consortium if applicable. There are other general differences, like some questions are worded differently and some character limits have changed. All differences, along with a comprehensive step-by-step guide, can be found within our Guide for Applicants, the link for which is on our handout. Moving on to more specific changes, starting with changes within activities. Firstly, the most noticeable change is that all duration of mobility is now calculated as an average. This has been introduced to allow for some flexibility regarding mobility durations, especially for larger projects. It is important that even though it is not an exact number, that the duration and the budget that it creates within the form seems realistic and achievable. As a tip, if all of your mobilities are the same duration, it may be easier to use the precise average of the planned mobilities. For larger projects with different durations, refer to the total number of days and decide whether it will be feasible for your organization to deliver the total number of days calculated. Secondly, linked to the first point, mobilities are no longer entered into the form as a flow. They are now entered just per activity type and country group within the activity on the application form, along with the average duration of all the flows to the same country group. The budget is then created using this information. Finally, The previous application form have asked for the country of the hosting partner organization when filling out the activity section. However, for 2019 call, it is only necessary to know the group of countries the receiving organization belongs to. Each group has different unit costs, and this is how the budget is calculated. Although it is not a requirement to enter the exact receiving country, a strong application will include the planned destinations of mobilities in the narrative of its application form. Moving on to the changes affecting the budget section of the application form, it is now possible to record the amount of participants that doesn't require a grant, meaning no travel or individual support will be requested for them, but with organizational support requested for. This may be useful for some projects who have participants who don't need funding and haven't been able to stipulate this in the past. Some wording has been added to the program guide this year that affects the budget reading travel. Projects are still able to apply for financial support for expensive travel costs up to a maximum of 80% of total eligible costs. However, if these exceptional costs are awarded, this replaces the standard travel grant, and this has been clarified in the program guide this year. Within this new application form, as the exact durations and destinations are not defined at application, the final budget summary shows an estimated grant rather than an exact amount. If you are awarded funding, it will be at final report stage that your final grant will be calculated based on the exact number of mobilities reported and the associated unit costs, which you can find in the Erasmus Plus program guide. Applicants are strongly recommended to ensure that the amounts entered are able to be delivered, and budgets will be assessed in proportion to the organizational and financial capacity of the applicant. Does anyone have any question on the application form and the new sections, features, and rules as outlined in the webinar, or they may have noticed from the 2019 Erasmus Plus program guide? Thank you very much for your questions. My colleague Olivia is now replying to them, and I will continue with the presentation. I'd like to cover now some key points and possible questions regarding the application form, which ask you to break down your mobility activities. Here I'll be covering potential questions and problematic areas. To start with, I'd like to clarify the distance band once you've entered it in the relevant information to request for individual support under an activity type. You move on to requesting for travel, and you're asked to enter the number of participants relating to the appropriate distance band. You have to use the European Commission's distance calculator in order to select the correct option. Be aware that the distance band should cover the entire journey from the UK point of origin to the specific venue of the activities. Be aware that this is measured in one straight line from point of origin to destination. Please note that the distance is meant as the distance for a one-way journey, but the travel unit costs have been calculated to cover the return journey. Secondly, the list of activities table is a new addition to the application form, and it allows you to simply add the amount of mobilities you wish to apply for as part of your project under each activity type. Within each activity type, you are able to have multiple participants allocated to multiple distance bands and country groups. This is replacing the flaws we mentioned earlier. If activity types are left blank, they will remain within the table but with no funding allocated to them. When the PDF version of the application form is generated, the table will still have the empty activity types. Finally, you will need to ensure that the country of origin is always the United Kingdom and that the country of destination is eligible for this action type. For further details regarding eligible participating countries for Key Action 1, please see the program guide. The only exception to this will be if your adult education project plans to receive teaching or training from foreign staff mobility at your organization in the UK. In this case, the country of origin will be that of your partner organization sending the trainer. Here I'll be covering potential questions and problematic areas. To start with, if you intend to apply as a national consortium, you will need to add at least 2 consortium members to your application form for your application to be eligible. There must be a minimum of 3 organizations within a national consortium, which includes you as the applicant organization and 2 other UK organizations. Please also ensure that your consortium partners are eligible to participate in the Erasmus Plus program. Guidance on this is provided within the Adult Education Guide for applicants available on our website. For example, sole traders and organizations that are not incorporated are not eligible to participate. If one of your consortium organizations is ineligible, resulting in only 2 eligible consortium members, this will make your application ineligible and the UK National Agency will not be able to fund the project. Secondly, although as Key Action 1 Adult Education Mobility projects, you are not obliged to identify a receiving organization at the application stage, but you are strongly recommended to identify your partners and include them within your application. By doing this, you will strengthen the quality of your application. Identifying your partners within the application provides an opportunity for you to demonstrate how your partner's knowledge and expertise will meet the objectives and potentially add value to the activities of your project. If you do not input the receiving organization in the application form, you should indicate within the application the country and the city or town where mobilities will take place. If your application is successful, the national agency will request your receiving partner's details at a later date. UK consortium partners, on the other hand, must be identified in the application. Are there any questions about this activity section? Many thanks for your queries, and now I'd like to cover some basic information on the budget which you can request under Key Action 1 Adult Education Mobility. There are many similarities, and we hope you will have questions on this aspect. The funding under Key Action 1 Adult Education is a contribution to the costs of delivering the project. The budget items seen here are unit costs. Unit costs, the funding, is automatically calculated depending on the unit. This can be the number of participants for a certain duration or a set cost per distance traveled, for example. Budget headings using unit costs are travel, organizational support, individual support, and course fees where applicable. Organizational support is determined by the number of participants and covers the organizational and management work needed to successfully complete a mobility project, like preparation, monitoring, validation, and dissemination. Travel is determined by the distance between the sending and hosting city, using the official EU distance calculator online. Individual support covers the day-to-day expenses of mobility participants while on mobility, including accommodation, food, and local transport. You can also request individual support for one travel day before and one after the mobility. Course fees provide a contribution towards course fees for staff training within schools and education projects, and is paid at a flat rate per date. Please note that this is capped at a maximum of €700 per participant. For your reference, the amount of organizational support applies to all projects and it is a fixed amount multiplied by the number of participants within the project. This budget heading is meant to cover the organizational and management work needed to successfully complete a mobility project, like the preparation, the monitoring of participants, validation of learning activities, and dissemination of results. Individual support, again, applies to all projects and covers the day-to-day expenses of participants while on mobility, including accommodation, food, and local transport. You can also request individual support for one day before and one after the mobility. The individual support needs to be spent on the participants in full. Funding for actual costs is obviously based on the real cost of the item or service, but only a certain percentage of the cost will be covered. Budget headings using actual costs are special needs support up to 100% and exceptional costs. For exceptional costs, a percentage of the actual total cost will be funded via the Erasmus Plus budget. The percentages are more information are in the program guide. Special needs support will support for specific needs and exceptional costs are based on actual costs and need to be justified within the application. Specifically, exceptional costs include funding for financial guarantees in a very rare case and expensive travel costs, which includes any expensive domestic travel costs and travel to and from outermost regions and overseas territories and countries. Please note that the expensive travel costs can only be claimed for in cases where applicants can demonstrate that the standard Erasmus Plus travel grant will not cover at least 70% of the overall travel cost. These costs will replace the standard grant. This is important to note that any request for financial support to cover special needs support and exceptional costs must be clearly explained in the application form. The assessor will not assume anything in relation to these costs and can recommend cutting them from the budget unless adequately justified. In general, a strong application will justify what the project would need the grant estimated throughout the application and ensure that estimated grant given is realistic for the project and would be able to be used effectively. We thought we would cover some general principles here and then open the floor to questions you may have. The grant is a contribution to the cost of delivering the project and the principle of co-financing applies. This means that the grant awarded may not cover all the costs of implementing the project, but it is still intended as a financial incentive to carry out projects that might be otherwise not feasible. There is no upper or lower limit on the number of participants that you can involve or on the funding that you can apply for, but you must demonstrate your capacity to run the project. Funding is calculated on a per participant basis and on the basis of set unit costs for certain elements or real costs in other cases. There are unit cost contribution and actual cost contributions. With unit costs, the funding is automatically calculated depending on the unit, This can be the number of participants for a certain duration or a set cost per distance traveled, for example. Budget headings using unit costs are travel, organizational support, individual support, and course fees under adult education where applicable. Funding for actual costs is obviously based on the real cost for the item or service, but only a certain percentage of the cost will be covered. Budget headings using actual costs are special needs support and exceptional costs. For exceptional costs, the percentage of the actual total cost will be funded by the Erasmus Plus budget varies depending on the type of exceptional cost. For exact percentages and more information, please see the program guide. Are there now any questions on the budget? Are there any other questions at this point? Again, many thanks for your questions. And this is the final poll of the session. So, is your organization ready to submit an application? Have you read the guidance, watched our pre-recorded webinars, and looked at the form? Many thanks for answering the poll, and it's very positive that you're already working on your application. Should you need any further assistance, please don't hesitate to raise any question or be in contact with us. To move on, we have now a few hints and tips for completing your application form. Aim to submit your application in good time before the deadline, allow time for final proofreading and to deal with any unexpected technical glitches. Include all the key information in your application form. It seems obvious, but make sure you answer the question in the application form fully and provide as much relevant detail as possible. Cross-refer with the quality criteria to ensure these are being addressed. Don't assume that anything is obvious. Make it clear. Avoid errors or inconsistencies and make sure the application form itself includes all the key information about your project. Make sure your project is realistic and achievable. Remember that if you are successful, you will be expected to deliver the project as outlined in the approved application, so you must make sure your plans are realistic and achievable, bearing in mind the makeup and capacity of your partnership. Think about quality over quantity. More is not necessarily always more. Review the award and eligibility criteria in the program guide, as well as the guidance for assessors available on our website. Being aware of the elements your application is being scored against will inform the information to provide in response to the questions asked in the form. The area where applicants score weakest is impact and dissemination, so don't forget to pay attention to this section. Access to NA support. There is a lot of support available from the national agency to help you out in submitting your application. To conclude, I'd like to point out the further support that is available. There are detailed guides for applicants on how to fill out and submit the application form on our website, on the Key Action 1 Adult Education Staff Mobility page. As discussed, you can listen and watch our recorded application support webinars. There is one for Key Action 1 Adult Education specifically. The links to where they can be viewed is being provided to you via the chat box. If you haven't done so already, please sign up to our newsletter, as this provides all the most up-to-date information about the call and the Erasmus Plus program. On our website, you can also find other important information and key documents to support you with completing your application. We also have a helpline where our team is available to answer your questions about your Key Action 1 application. Don't forget the deadline. It is 11 a.m. UK time. On the form, it is shown the Brussels time, so 11 a.m. UK time on the 5th of February 2019. Thank you for your attention. We'll be around for a couple of more minutes to answer any final questions, and if there are any more that come up, please contact us via the erasmusplus@ecourse.com email address or the number on this screen. As said, our team is also available every day from Monday to Friday to answer any queries you may have via the erasmusplus@ecourse.com inbox or our helpline. You can see the number on the slide, and you can find it in our handout as well. Do also keep an eye on the Erasmus Plus website for news and further guidance. We hope you found the session useful today, and we wish you luck with your future applications.